What happens when the people who promise to love you decide you're worth more dead than alive?
A woman is her mother and brother to kill her husband.
Matthew Restelli thought he was driving to save his marriage. His wife, Catherine, had been staying at her mother's house in Utah with their 3 kids, and after weeks of separation, she finally seemed ready to come home. "The door's unlocked," she told him. "Just come in when you get here." But Matthew had no idea his own family was tracking his every mile, and walking through that unlocked door would be the last thing he'd ever do. When Catherine Restelli's marriage began falling apart, she faced a choice that millions of divorced parents navigate every day: how to share custody of their children. Instead of choosing lawyers, she chose something far darker. From the outside, Matthew and Catherine Restelli looked like any other family trying to make it work. They'd built a life together in California. Matthew was 42, Catherine was 37, and they had 2 beautiful children who were their world. But somewhere along the way, the love turned to resentment, and the resentment turned to something much worse. Catherine's family had always been tight-knit, maybe too tight-knit. Her mother, Tracy Grist, was the kind of woman who'd do anything for her children. Her brother, Kevin Ellis, had his own struggles, but family came first. When Catherine's marriage started crumbling, they rallied around her like families do. But this wasn't just taking sides in a divorce. In May 2024, Catherine sent a text to a friend that should have been a cry for help. "I'm trying to wait. I just might murder Matt today, though." Her friend probably thought she was venting. We've all said things in anger we didn't mean. Except Catherine apparently did mean it. By June, she'd taken the kids and fled to her mother's house in Utah. Matthew must have been devastated. One day he had a family, and the next day, his wife and children were gone, hundreds of miles away. Summer 2024 stretched on, and Matthew was desperate. He wanted his children back. He wanted his wife back. He probably lay awake at night wondering what he could have done differently, how he could fix this mess his life had become. What Matthew didn't know was that while he was grieving his broken family, that same family was planning something unthinkable. They'd secretly placed a GPS tracker, an Apple AirTag, on his truck. They labeled it Work with a little poop emoji next to it, as if Matthew himself was nothing more than garbage to be monitored and disposed of.
Shocked at the utter stupidity involved in this case in multiple levels. She sends text messages that are incriminating. She does social media posts day of the murder. She goes out on a date the day after the murder.
Think about that for a moment. 3 people, a wife, a mother, a brother, huddled around their phones, watching a little dot move across the map, representing a man who just wanted to see his kids again. Tracy Grist wasn't just supporting her daughter, she was allegedly researching how to get away with murder. Police found her internet search history, and it's chilling. She'd been obsessively reading about the Dan Markle case, where a Florida professor was killed in a custody battle orchestrated by his ex-in-laws. She wanted to know when the conspirators got caught, as if she was trying to avoid their mistakes. July 12th started like any other day for Matthew. He probably had hope in his heart when Catherine called. Maybe they could work things out. Maybe he'd drive to Utah and come back with his family intact. He had no way of knowing that his wife had already decided he would never come back at all. As Matthew drove those lonely highways from California to Utah, 3 people were watching his progress in real time. They knew exactly when he'd arrive. They knew he'd walk through that unlocked door, trusting and unsuspecting. Kevin Ellis was waiting for him in the darkness. The shots that ended Matthew's life shattered more than just his family. They destroyed any illusion that this was about love or protection. This was about control, and Matthew had become an obstacle to be eliminated. When police arrived, they found Matthew's body and a family's hastily constructed lie falling apart in real time. Tracy Grist screamed at everyone to, "Don't say anything." Not exactly the reaction of a grieving grandmother whose son-in-law had just been killed in self-defense. Kevin claimed Matthew had attacked him with a knife, that he had no choice but to shoot. But detectives have seen enough crime scenes to know when something doesn't add up. The knife was gripped in Matthew's right hand, blade turned inward. like someone had placed it there after he was already dead. One problem was that Matthew was left-handed. That one detail, putting the knife in the wrong hand, revealed everything. These weren't criminal masterminds. They were just desperate people who thought they were smarter than they actually were.
I want to go to the date after the murder. And then, she's getting ready for a date, going on a date. So she apparently, according to the police, Kate Restelli was seeing somebody. So that was maybe part of the reason she wanted out of her marriage. They also say that she searched on the internet, how soon is too soon to tell somebody you love them, and 5 ways to get rid of hickeys. It's almost kind of like a high school kid or something like that. It seems very immature and juvenile, searching about how to get rid of hickeys.
But the real gut punch came when investigators dug into Catherine's digital life. The day after her husband's murder, the day after the father of her children was shot dead, she was getting ready for a date. She was Googling, how soon is too soon to tell somebody you love them, and 5 ways to get rid of hickeys. It gets worse.
The indictment says, after Matt's death, Catherine FaceTimed one of her friends from the Discord group and showed her a picture of where the carpet was bloodstained from Matt's death. The friend overheard Tracy say that if she had known that the friend liked death, Tracy would have taken a picture of the body. And there's more.
Catherine was active on Discord, chatting with online friends about her life. On the morning of the murder, she posted, I have to do big girl things today. Wish me luck. When friends asked what she meant, she stayed silent. After Matthew was dead, she actually showed friends photos of the blood-stained carpet where her husband had died.
The indictment says, after Matt's death, Catherine FaceTimed one of her friends from the Discord group and showed her a picture of where the carpet was bloodstained from Matt's death. The friend overheard Tracy say that if she had known that the friend liked death, Tracy would have taken a picture of the body. And there's more.
One friend reportedly overheard Tracy saying that if she'd known the friend liked death, she would have taken a picture of Matthew's body. These aren't the actions of people defending themselves. These are the actions of people who have lost all sense of humanity. Justice moved swiftly, but not swiftly enough for Matthew's family, who had to live with the knowledge that his own wife had orchestrated his death. All 3 conspirators were arrested and charged with first-degree murder. But in July 2025, Catherine finally faced what she'd done. She pled guilty to reduced charges, second-degree murder, conspiracy, and felony discharge of a firearm. The woman who had once texted about murdering her husband finally admitted she'd done exactly that. Her mother, Tracy, and brother Kevin are still fighting their charges, facing trial in January 2026. But Catherine's guilty plea means she'll likely testify against them. The final betrayal in this case built on betrayals. Matthew's mother saw right through their lives from the beginning. Days after her son was killed, she told Tracy Grist, "This whole thing feels like a setup." A mother's intuition proved heartbreakingly accurate. 3 children lost their father because their mother decided he was an inconvenience. That's the brutal truth at the heart of this case. Matthew Restelli drove hundreds of miles thinking he was saving his marriage, but he was actually driving to his own execution, planned by the people who should have loved him most. The ripple effects of this tragedy extend far beyond the courtroom. Those 3 children will grow up knowing that their mother orchestrated their father's death. They'll have to live with the knowledge that the grandmother who probably baked them cookies and read them bedtime stories was Googling how to get away with murder. They'll understand that their uncle, who might have taught them to ride bikes or throw a baseball, was the one who pulled the trigger that made them orphans. The saddest part is that Matthew probably died still loving his children, still hoping they'd have a better life. He had no idea that his desire to be a father had signed his death warrant. He came to Utah believing he was fighting for his family, not realizing that his family had already decided he was expendable. Think about Matthew's final moments. Walking through that unlocked door, maybe calling out, "Hello?" or "I'm here." Maybe he was carrying gifts for the kids or flowers for Catherine. Maybe he was nervous but hopeful, rehearsing what he'd say to convince his wife to come home. Then Kevin stepped out of the shadows, and Matthew's world ended in gunfire and betrayal. What haunts me most isn't even the poor planning or the digital evidence or the wrong-handed knife. It's imagining Matthew in those final seconds, realizing that the woman he'd married, the mother of his children, had led him to slaughter. Did he understand what was happening? Did he call out Catherine's name? Did he think about his kids as he was dying? Legal experts called this plot shockingly stupid, and it was. But it was also shockingly cruel, shockingly heartless, and shockingly final. No amount of custody agreements or court battles or family therapy could bring Matthew back to his kids. And for what? So Catherine could avoid sharing custody? So she could start fresh with a new boyfriend without the inconvenience of her husband? The Restelli case reveals something darker about human nature. How ordinary people can convince themselves that murder is a reasonable solution to their problems. Tracy Grist wasn't some hardened criminal. She was a grandmother who probably volunteered at school events and brought casseroles to neighbors. Kevin Ellis wasn't a hired killer. He was just a brother who thought family loyalty meant eliminating threats to his sister's happiness. But here's the thing about crossing that line. Once you've decided another human being is disposable, once you reduce a father to a poop emoji on your tracking app, once you start researching other people's murder cases for inspiration, you've already lost your humanity. The actual killing becomes almost inevitable. Sometimes the monsters in our lives aren't strangers lurking in shadows. They're the people who sit across from us at the dinner table, who know exactly how to hurt us because they know exactly how much we love them. They're the ones who can lure us to our death with promises of reconciliation, who can manipulate our deepest hopes and use them as weapons against us. That's a betrayal deeper than murder. That's a betrayal of everything we believe about love, family, and trust. Matthew Restelli died because he believed in the fundamental goodness of the people he loved most, and they exploited that belief to destroy him. The cruelest irony is that if Catherine had simply filed for divorce and fought for custody through the legal system, she probably would have gotten what she wanted. Courts favor mothers in custody cases, especially when they can claim the father is controlling or abusive. She could have had her freedom, her children, and her new relationship, all without becoming a murderer. Instead, she chose the path that guaranteed her children would lose both parents, and she'd spend the rest of her life in prison. What drives someone to cross that line from anger to murder? From wanting someone out of your life to wanting them dead? Maybe it's narcissism, the belief that your problems are more important than another person's life. Maybe it's desperation, feeling so trapped that murder seems like the only solution. Or maybe it's just evil, pure and simple, dressed up in the language of family loyalty and self-defense. Whatever drove Catherine, Tracy, and Kevin to plan Matthew's death, they've destroyed far more than one man's life. They've traumatized 3 innocent children, devastated Matthew's family, and exposed the darkest possibilities of what happens when family bonds turn toxic and love becomes a weapon. What do you think drives families to spiral into such darkness? How do we recognize the warning signs before it's too late? Share your thoughts in the comments below, because understanding how families can spiral into such darkness might be the only way to prevent the next Matthew Restelli from walking through an unlocked door into his own execution. And if you're dealing with a difficult divorce or custody battle, please remember that there are legal solutions to every family problem. I'm Juju Bean, and I want you to know that murder is never the answer, and the consequences always reach far beyond the grave.